Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I'm your host, Intern Joe Macheca. South Carolina fell to Missouri on Saturday by a final score of 34-12. A rough one for the Gamecocks up there in the other Columbia, Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz seemed to have the answer for South Carolina all day long, offensively and defensively. Really, really tough performance if you are South Carolina wanting to respond after Florida. And I mean, obviously coming out of the bye, you wanted to respond against Florida as well. But this game, kind of felt like a turning point for South Carolina going into it. They had a great week of practice. The morale was up. You were led to believe that they should have won this game and were going to, at least going into it. But you came out flat and you didn't perform in the first half. And I mean, Missouri had 24 points in that first half. You go into halftime trailing 24-3. The life is kind of out of your sails already, and then you're chasing the game. And I mean, South Carolina did a good job of chasing the game. I mean, obviously they didn't convert well, but their offense was humming enough to the point where it got you in the red zone. But then again, you need to score touchdowns in this league if you're going to win games, and you didn't. But before I get into all of that and everything and why it all happened the way it did, I want to talk about our sponsors today. Obviously, first off, we're going with our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Taxiety is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. And this show is also brought to you by our good friend over at the Movement Mortgage Network, Clint Hammond. Clint is a good friend of the program and a good friend of Gamecock Central. In need of help with your mortgage, call our good friend Clint Hammond at the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with 5-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and our guy, former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth, with their mortgages. Give our guy Clint a call. You can see him above us on all of our Gamecock Central live programming. His number on the screen right now. And for those listening, 803-771-6933. Once again, 803-771-6933. Give our guy Clint a call. He is the man. Getting into this one, it's hard to put a loss like this into words because you were bad, just all over, just bad. There were bright spots, sure, and I'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But starting off with the bad, I guess, not great at all. Really, you couldn't score offensively, couldn't find the end zone. A lot of that boils down to being 3 and 14 on third down. It's not great. Can't win a whole lot of games when you're 3 and 14, 3 for 14 on third down, especially in the SEC. So not great for the South Carolina Gamecocks there. Defensively, I mean, I know you wanted a big day from your defense, but you didn't get it. You just didn't get it, and it stinks. It really is not fun when your defense allows 24 points in the first half. It took you out of the game. And this offense, like I said earlier, you started really, really slow. You started very slow in this game, and you just allowed Missouri to get up and kind of suck the life out of you. You had some charge later, but it was hard. You couldn't really get things on a roll like you wanted to when it mattered. And an away game like that with a team as talented as Missouri is this year, at least, you had to get up early and you had to, ball out, and you had to like make this a game going into halftime. Obviously, you deferred to the second half, but you need your defense to make a couple more stops in that game, and in the first half at least, to kind of give your offense some life. I mean, they look like Swiss cheese in that first half, and in the second half they tuned it up. Right, they were better making stops. Looked better fundamentally, but man, you did not come ready to play in that first half. I don't know how that happens after, we were told the week of practice was really good and, arguably the best week of practice yet. I get it, you're banged up, but we're getting to the point in the season where, you're running out of excuses. And I'm not saying injuries are an excuse, sure, but eventually, like some of the guys that are that you're playing in the game are gonna be in the system long enough to have learned the system and stuff like that. So that's my opinion on all of that. But getting in, I guess, more focusing on the offense here. Like I said, my biggest thing with this offense, they can't convert on third down. They didn't convert on third down. 3 of 14 on third down. That's not going to win you any football games. It really isn't. So that was bad. I think, obviously couldn't score, couldn't find your way into the end zone. Relying on Mitch Jeter to, for all of your points. And Mitch missed one, and shout out to him for being able to bounce back and nail the next 4. One of them from 51. Like, Mitch is a very good college kicker. And so I'm glad he, was able to bounce back there. And, Kai Kroger also looked good. While I'm on the topic of special teams, another bounce back game for him. Looked a little bit better. He 4 punts, 187 yards. He was averaging 46 yards a punt, and 2 of them inside the 20. So good game from Kai as well. But back to this offense, man. I think this is going to be an adjustment game for Dowell Loggins, just kind of learning on what plays to call in certain situations. But at the end of the day, too, it does come down to execution, right? You got to execute the play on third down. I think there were a couple play designs that were broken. Spencer was running for his life as well. So that happens. But I think everyone learns from a loss like this, and Dowell is going to be taking some stuff. From this one into next week. So I think, it's going to be an adjustment game, sure, but, there are a lot of things that need to happen across the board. You need to execute better. And the offensive line, you're missing Vershawn Lee. Really, really tough. Right when you start to think that your offensive line is getting some momentum and these guys are playing well together and meshing and starting to build and all that stuff, and it looks like it's doing all right, Vershawn Lee goes out and you're missing him, and then you're playing, Legos almost, where you're plugging and playing guys at certain spots. And that can get tough, and that catches up with you. And with a defense, especially a defensive line as talented as Missouri's, you're gonna allow some pressures and some hurries and stuff like that. But Spencer was running for his life. 6 sacks by this Missouri defense. Not great. It feels like week 1 again. If I mean, at least from, I'm sure for South Carolina fans, in terms of the offensive line, you didn't have a great game. And granted, you were plugging and playing with as many different guys in different spots. It's that gets really hard. And I mean, I understand that. So that is largely in part why I think, the offensive line was so bad, is because you had so many different guys plugging and playing, and especially having that come right after you're starting to get comfortable with Vershawn Lee in there and the freshman, and now you got Gargiulo playing center, and Gargiulo, probably, he'd admit this, probably didn't have the best of games, but again, he's been doing a good job considering the situation that he's in and having to be moved around. And I understand that when you're playing with guys in different spots, it gets really confusing sometimes. So I'm not saying that it's fully excused, right? Because you still have to execute and block the guy in front of you at the end of the day. But man, like, this offensive line it's been one thing after another. And so they just can't catch a break, really. Right as you were trying to get going, get some momentum, right? Play down the rest of the stretch, your anchor goes out. So that's really, really, really tough. Missouri was obviously lethal on defense. played really, really, really well. I'm gonna get the pressure stats for you here in a second. They hurried Spencer Rattler a total of 16 times. They had a total of 24 pressures, 7 sacks allowed, according to PFF. Not good sledding for this South Carolina offensive line. And Missouri's defense, all credit to them. They were able to do what South Carolina's defense was trying to do and needed to do to Brady Cook in this run game too, to try to disrupt things. I mean, they were getting the pressure that you wanted, and I'll get into South Carolina's defensive stats in a second. But yeah, not great. And then the last thing I guess I'll bring up about this offense, and sure, like I'll have it, interweaved with the rest of the conversation going forward, but um, this run game was bad, right? Was not great. I mean, I think that the run game being as bad as it was doesn't necessarily help Spencer Rattler out as well. And so you just need to execute better. Run blocking, all of that. You need to get your guy upfield, get your running back upfield. Mario Anderson had an okay day. I mean, still, as the bell cow back, was still all right. He finished the day 12 carries, 68 yards. Obviously, no touchdown, 7 carry. His longest carry was 17 yards. It felt like South Carolina just abandoned the run game as well, right? South Carolina got into a tough spot and then just, had to start slinging the rock all over the place. And granted, the run game wasn't working at all, really. So was it fair to abandon it? Sure, but you did it again, right? Like, this is something that we've seen in the past, and was it the right move? Probably, because you weren't really getting anything. It was a lot of tough sledding, so it was really, really, really hard to get anything going in the run game, and eventually you do have to throw the ball all over the place. So I don't know. It's tough to say. Is it fair to abandon the run game that as early as they did? Probably not. But again, this offense lives and breathes off of explosive plays and passing, and you don't have a whole lot of time going down the stretch chasing a 24-3 lead, in that second half. So of course you're going to throw the ball around. So tough. And obviously the quarterback, we'll touch on him too before we get into the defense, but Spencer looked all right, in my opinion, right? Didn't have the greatest of games in the world. A couple overthrows, in my opinion, and could have done better, could have, hit a couple more guys in stride, stuff like that. His final line was um, 23 of 40, 217 yards and a pick. That pick went right through Omega Blake's hands. Yeah, if you're Spencer, like maybe drop it down a little bit, but that was a high fly ball. Like that ball was, a play that you got to go up and make if you're Omega Blake. But I mean, it's tough. He's a redshirt freshman, sure, but you got to make that play. Other than that, I mean, you know, Spencer, he did well with his legs. He had a really nice long run. You know, he talked about it a couple weeks earlier about his dad telling him, if he sees green grass, then go. I think that was a little bit better, and his decision making was better. I think I really didn't see a decision that was. I mean, there were a couple of decisions there that were like, all right, like maybe don't throw that. But again, when you're chasing the lead like that, especially in the second half, down 24-3, and you could still there's still plenty of time to win that game, but when you're just chasing that lead, right, the whole time, and so you start to get desperate there. And I mean, I don't think Spencer had any like bad force feeds. Like, he was quick to throw the ball out of bounds and quick to reset and do all that. So I think that was good, but yeah, no, nothing compared to like what we have seen from him like at Oklahoma and in his previously, right? So I got sure like we can evaluate him. Yeah, like a couple bad overthrows or something like that, bad decisions there with the football and just like how he's grown. But like I mean, really like nothing like idiotic. It's like, why are you throwing that football there? Like I could see why he made a couple of the throws that he didn't. Again, overthrew a couple of guys, but nothing too crazy in the pick. That it comes down to, Gotta make a play. Omega Blake has to make that play. But where he lies on the draft board, at least for me, I think he's a day one or day two pick. I think it would be late in the first round on day one. So, but I personally think he's leaning towards a day two pick just because of the way South Carolina is playing right now. I think a couple teams realize that they might be able to go get him in the second and third round. So we will see. I think right now he's playing as well as any quarterback in the country. His maturity's shown a little bit better, and he's drastically improved. So we'll see where he ends up NFL wise. But that's kind of everything I had for the offense. Defensively, oh woof, man, that is not good. Again, you had a lot of players that were good individually. They had some good individual performances. You just got beat at the wrong times, especially in the first half. You let them jump all over you and then just kind of coast. You made some stops in that second half, right? And it was kind of a breath of fresh air. It's like this defense can make a couple stops. It's like, this is what this looks like. This is what defense looks like. Like, now respond to it. And they just couldn't find a way. And granted, no points in that third quarter. And then you allow, a field goal and a touchdown late in that game, but to make it, I guess, uglier. But it, you cannot be saving your defense for the second half. You really can't. You are running out of things to say for poor execution, right? Like Luther Burden was double teamed on the long ball, and I find a way to break that play up, but I don't know how he gets behind you in that situation. Sure, yeah, it was a great individual play, but setting that up, if you get pressure on Brady Cook and make him throw that ball maybe a little bit sooner or under a little bit of pressure, I guarantee you it's not as accurate. So you need to just put it all together. This team was, bad in hurries and sacks. It was something that they talked about going into this week, that something that they needed to do well. Well, 7 QB hurries and no sacks. Missouri's defense, on the contrary, had 16 hurries and 9 pressures, and 7 sacks as well. So so tough, like comparatively. Like you needed that from your defensive front, and you're just not getting it. The DBs are playing great. I mean, Nick Eamon-Wari, DQ Smith, Marcellus Dial, all of those guys, are playing well defensively, but you're not getting them any help by making the quarterback run for his life a little bit, or, simply just, have a little bit of pressure to make a dumber decision. Just not great. You need to string together just a complete game offensively and defensively, right? You can't come out flat against a team like Texas A&M. You knew you couldn't come out flat in this game because it's a road game in the SEC and they're going to jump all over you. But you did, and you came out flat. This can't happen down the road, and it can't happen against Clemson because Clemson will take it to you in your home stadium like South Carolina did last year. But, sure, Clemson lost last night. And going back to this defense, you need – it's put up or shut up time. You are running out of excuses. It doesn't really matter whether you're as banged up as you are or you can't execute it. Can't get hurries on the quarterback. No one is going to feel sorry for you at this point. Like, it's put up or shut up time. You have guys. There have been great individual performances. Like I said, there were good looks yesterday. Guys played well yesterday, but you need to execute and string together some stops and just put the foot down, right? This defense has been, previously mean and all this and like really just suffocating defense. It's time. It is time to step up and show who you are. Defense it's you gotta be mean. You gotta, put the foot in the door and remind people who you are, or at least who you're trying to be, because South Carolina has yet to show that yet. They don't have any defensive identity right now. And it's spiraling. Like it's coming to the point where, and I'll get into Clayton White in a second, but like it is coming to the point where it is going into the danger zone, right? It is going to the point where Clayton White's job is going to be in jeopardy, sure, but you're not going to make a bowl if you don't step up. And and looking ahead, you have to win 4 out of your next 5 to be bowl eligible, right? And one of those is on the road at Texas A&M, one of the hardest environments in college football at Kyle Field. And then you also have your arch rival Clemson. Those are your 2 biggest tests. Clemson, obviously, at the end of the year. And then, Kentucky's no joke. Kentucky is no joke. Personally, I think they're a bunch of they're fakers, and I don't think they're as good as they seem to be. There's some internal problems, and they, like Garrett Anderson joked, they're already on to basketball season. I don't think Kentucky is that good this year, and that's without any bias or anything like that. I've yet to see more from Kentucky, but this defense, you're gonna need to stop the run. Good in pass protection. Brady Cook he was 14 of 24, 198 yards and a touchdown. Not bad from this defense. You kind of limited their bigger players, but then Cody Schrader ran all over you. You allowed 220 rushing yards. And the quarterback had 9 carries for 64 yards and a touchdown. Then Schrader, 26 carries, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. So great. Rah. You stopped the big 2-headed monster in Luther Burden and Brady Cook. Well, you forgot about Cody Schrader. And they did what they wanted in the run game. And that kind of, kept the defense on the field, made you more tired. And, you can't win, right? Last week, you can't defend the pass, and Graham Mertz throws for a bunch of yards all over you at homecoming. And then this week, you come into it knowing you got to stop the pass, and here we go again, going into it. And then you stop the pass, and, well, they run the ball all over you. So really, really, really tough for this defense. Next week, you need to go defend both. Plain and simple. Texas A&M has a good quarterback. They have a good running back. Jimbo knows him some football. So you're going to have to go into it with a full head of steam and, make stops when you need to. And suffocate the life out of that crowd. It's going to be a new kick. So you have a chance to get in there and make a statement. Get this thing back on track at Texas A&M. So, and now again, like I said, with Clayton White, this is entering the area where his job is going to start to be on the line here. You're running out of excuses, and if it continues the way it is, it's not gonna work out in Clayton's favor. I say that similar with Spencer Rattler, and on the flip side of things, right? If he kind of continues. Obviously, this last game was a little bit of a step back, but if he plays the way he's been playing for the first half of this season, he's going to play his way into, a first-round draft pick or maybe a second-round draft pick, So, but Clayton White, they continue this trend of bad defense, especially, now and on the road. If you don't make a bowl and you get blown out in your last, 4 or 5 games, Clayton White probably won't be at South Carolina by the end of the year. So, that is that. I will end the show, obviously, because there are a lot of, negative things going around about this program right now. And it's very easy to be negative when you're 2-5. So it's time to put the optimism glasses on. Yes, this is kind of a dumb segment, but we need a little positivity to end the show, I guess, if you will. So, optimistic about South Carolina football currently. Well, that this year one of your biggest problems is your offensive line. You have the Great Wall of Carolina currently assembling in Tree Babalade and Trevon Baugh. And then you also have 2 of the best offensive linemen in the state of South Carolina coming in to play for you next year, Cam Pringle and Josiah Thompson. So there is hope in the future, right? And the class is also stocked with, you got a defensive end where, you need pass rushing and pressure. Well, you've got Dylan Stewart, Des U's learning still. But I mean, you have some dogs coming in, right? That is hopeful. That is optimistic, right? There is a brighter future, right? And this year the offensive line, one of the toughest positions in football to have success with guys that you threw together. You're getting some dogs. You are getting some absolute dogs coming into the program, and also Spencer Rattler's leaving. But you have Luke Doty. You have Lenore Sellers, who and I everyone is probably assuming is going to be the guy next year, but you never know. Shout out to Luke Doty, and Doty's done a pretty good job of bringing him along. So we'll see what kind of talent comes up next year. But Nick Harbor is improving. Oh, also, I did want to mention Nick Harbor had himself a great game. He played 57 snaps for South Carolina. He had 2 receptions for 50 yards, and one of the best catches we've seen all year. The 5-star is improving. He said the game is slowing down to him. He's played the most amount of snaps. He's being utilized as a weapon. That is your future of the program, balling out. And then not to mention the 2, freshmen that are already here, Tree and Tro. Tree had a great game against Georgia, starting in a hostile environment, against Georgia, and same thing with Tro. Those guys are only going to get better and better. And the last crop of offensive linemen that you had for South Carolina, they got in and stayed stalwarts in the offensive lineup. So that is another good thing that you have going for you. Another good thing that you have going forward. You got Texas A&M on the road, and then you have 4 games at home. Even if you lose to Texas A&M, you have 4 games at your home stadium, one of the best in the SEC. Nothing beats home cooking, especially when it's at Williams-Brice. You have basically the last 4 games of your season to turn it up, and your destiny. You control your own destiny at this point. Do you want to make a bowl game or not? Is it realistic to say that they can win all 5 of them? Probably not. Can they win 4 out of the 5? Yeah. In my mind, yes. I think you can win 4 out of the 5. But you got to step up. But again, these are the optimism goggles. We're being optimistic here. So, again, I think that the culture of this program is another something that you can hold your head high on. I mean, after losing the way that you did against Florida and then having, quote unquote, the best week of practice that you've had in the season, that is a big thing, right? And all we hear about coming out of the Shane Beamer era at South Carolina is culture, 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 culture. What about the culture? The culture is good and all this and blah, blah, blah. And this is where you find out how good it is. This is where you find out if guys are checking in, guys are checking out early. So far, so good, right? This is why we got the optimism glasses on, because, so far, so good. Guys aren't checking out. Guys are staying into it. You saw guys play a full 4 quarters yesterday for the most part. This is where you find out how good your culture is. Are guys staying on? And then also, too, I mean, this happens with every season with the ups and downs, is you kind of find out who you really need and want on your team. The guys that are going to be playing through all of the good and all of the bad the same way. Those are the guys that you want on your team, and let alone be leaders. Another freshman, Pup Howard, one of those guys. I didn't see Pup take a play off at all yesterday. Played a lot of snaps for South Carolina's defense. He's developing. And linebackers are really, really hard position to develop at. And we're starting to see Blanton had flashes last year. Sure, he looked like a freshman still. But he had development last year, and he's had more development into this year. And then next season, their Pup will be a sophomore, Stone will be a junior, and you will have an established core at linebacker. So that should make you happy as well. But so that is, pretty much everything from the optimism standpoint. Guys aren't, long story short, guys are still bought in to your culture, to your program. All of your young guys are coming up, and you're recruiting really well. These are, the guys that Coach Beamer, Garrett Anderson said it last night on the post-game show. He's like, the first couple of years, Shane had to, produce with the guys that Muschamp had recruited, or the guys that were still left that hadn't transferred out that Muschamp had recruited. Now you're starting to see, obviously, the first crop of Shane's, recruits, or good recruits at least, in Nicholas Harbor, Pup Howard, those guys starting to produce, and guys that Shane recruited to play at South Carolina, right? You're starting to see that crop. So Shane's guys are slowly getting into the program and into the lineups and stuff like that. So that takes time, right? So, optimism, it stinks as a South Carolina fan, I'm sure, to be saying there's always next year, but things are looking up, right? And there is not, obviously, the way that this season has gone has been, not nearly what you expected it to be. But again, there is hope on the horizon. Certainly hope on the horizon as I take the optimism goggles off and come back down to planet Earth. But, long story short, right? Your work is in front of you, right? What you want this season to be is right in front of you. Do you want to make a bowl? Great. You got to go win. You have to go win. This is one of, the worst skids of the Shane Beamer era. And you're going to find out what kind of team you got in Texas A&M. You were going to find out what kind of team you got. Because if you get punched in the mouth in Texas A&M, are you going to see guys quit? Or are you guys going to see, them bounce back? What are you going to see if you're South Carolina? You're going to find out what kind of team, because I said it last week on this program that, Missouri was a big turning point for you, but it wasn't, clearly. So it's put up or shut up time now. And if you want to win and be bowl eligible, you need to go do something at Texas A&M, right? And it starts there. It's always a week-to-week thing. But knowing that you have a little bit of home cooking, you don't have to go anywhere. A couple easier games on the schedule, down the stretch, should give you some motivation to go win this one, just in case, it doesn't go right, and then you're forced to win your next four to maintain bowl eligibility. So that is everything at the end of the day. Not a whole lot to be said after a loss, unfortunately. So that is everything here from me at the walkthrough. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. Last night had the post-game show with Garrett Anderson, former Gamecock offensive lineman Garrett Anderson. You can go watch that on YouTube. Go watch Talking Tuesdays with Mike and I live at 7 on every Tuesday night. And then once again, we will also be live following the Texas A&M game. Noon kick over there in College Station, so it should be around 3:30-ish. We should be live for the post-game show. So thank you guys once again for tuning into the walkthrough. Have a good Sunday.